Hi, it's Washington State Republican Party Chairman Jim Walsh here for our regular Chairman's Update video. Busy week. It's been a busy couple of weeks since the 2026 legislative session in Olympia ended. The current governor has been busily signing bills passed during the session into law and doing press conferences to promote various bad ideas. It's going to be a very busy 2026 with a lot going on through the spring, summer, and fall. The WAGOP is going to focus its efforts in pushing back against some bad ideas from the current governor and trying to help the president back in D.C. in three ways, kind of using three tools: initiatives, lawsuits, and directed support at campaigns this November. I'll talk about each of them for a minute or two. First, with the initiatives. Two initiatives are already going to be on the November general election ballot in Washington. Those are the initiatives to protect girls' sports and to restore the Washington Parents' Bill of Rights. Those two are guaranteed to be at the top of the ballot in November. They're on the ballot. We will be supporting each of those through the year leading up to the general election. We also have our voter ID initiative out gathering signatures right now. And that's really one of the big issues that WAGOP is working on this spring and early summer. We have until the end of June. The actual due date is July 2nd, but we have until the end of June to collect about 340,000 signatures of registered voters in support of our initiative that will require voter ID, proof of citizenship, when people register to vote in Washington State. The policy is aligned with some of the changes in the SAVE Act, the federal bill working its way through Washington, D.C. right now. And these are good reforms that will help make elections more reliable and trustworthy in Washington. There's also talk going on, WAGOP is part of it, but amongst a coalition of groups about mounting an initiative to repeal the recently passed and unconstitutional state income tax here in Washington. It's a Washington Democrats' priority that is bad law and bad financial policy. WAGOP is working with the coalition that includes the organization Let's Go Washington and other organizations about the details on an initiative to repeal that state income tax. We're trying to work through some questions about whether it's better to do it quickly this year or maybe set it up to go in front of the legislators or the voters next year in 2027. Some of the details of that we're still working out. It's more of a coalition effort, so there are multi-part conversations going on. And I should say, in the meantime, the organization Let's Go Washington is testing a legal theory to try to do a referendum to overturn the state income tax. Normally, that would be prohibited because the state income tax bill had an emergency clause on it, but Let's Go Washington is in court testing that to see if they can get a referendum approved anyway, arguing that the wording of that clause in the state income tax bill was a necessity, not an emergency. We'll see how that goes for them in court. But the state party supports these efforts, whether a referendum or an initiative, whether in 2026 or 2027, to repeal this state income tax. Frankly, I'd like to see it go more quickly in 2026, but we're talking with our partners about the details of that. Moving on to the lawsuits, the main project there is a separate lawsuit to overturn the state income tax on constitutional grounds. And the state party has been a big part of preparing that argument. It has something to do with the 25-hour floor debate that we had during the legislative session over the state income tax proposal. And we helped organize that and clarify the kind of messaging in that long debate, which was set up to support the lawsuit challenging the state income tax. Now, the former State Attorney General Rob McKenna is kind of leading the charge. He's working with a couple of organizations to help fund and file the lawsuit challenging the state income tax. But we're supporting that effort, and the state party may file what's called an amicus brief, which is a friendly supporting document to that lawsuit. But McKenna's group is going to be the lead, and they are still working on the wording and the structure of that lawsuit. It will be filed probably within the next week or two. There are other legal actions going on. There may be a couple other lawsuits about the state income tax. There may be a lawsuit, well, there will be a lawsuit against the Washington Democrats' raid on the Left One public pension. And you may see a couple other lawsuits pushing back against bad bills signed into law by the current governor. The state party will support all of those, although we may not be the lead plaintiff or party to the lawsuit. Will support them. And it's worth pointing out that there's going to be more legal action, I believe, around several issues having to do with election integrity and other matters here in Washington. As you know, the U.S. Department of Justice has already sued the state, particularly the state Secretary of State's office, over the state Secretary of State's refusal to cooperate with the U.S., with the Federal Department of Justice, by sharing voter registration, voter data information. The current Secretary of State, who oversees elections here in Washington State, a fellow by the name of Steve Hobbs, has refused to cooperate, or only partly cooperated, with the lawful U.S. Justice Department request, really a demand, that the state share its registered voter data with them so that the Justice Department can check for dead people or illegal aliens or others who are improperly on Washington's registered voter databases. The U.S. Department of Justice also is looking at potential legal action against other state agencies here in Washington State with regard to some bad policies, for instance, that the state school superintendent, Mr. Reichtel, is engaged in enforcing his radical gender ideology on school kids in Washington. And also the governor, Mr. Ferguson, and the state attorney general, Mr. Brown, doing their willful interference with immigration enforcement, the sanctuary state policies, so-called. So the U.S. Department of Justice is going to engage in legal action on all these fronts. We're watching particularly the voter integrity, voter database actions, because those dovetail with our initiative for voter ID. We think those are connected. So watch these lawsuits. It's also worth noting that just this week, President Trump has replaced the U.S. Attorney General and put in place as an acting U.S. Attorney General, federal Attorney General, the former assistant who is an actually practiced litigator, a courtroom lawyer, and is likely, and a prosecutor, and is likely to be more aggressive in the U.S. Justice Department pursuing some of these issues. So that's the initiatives, that's the lawsuits, and finally we've got the elections coming up this November. Now, the WAGOP always supports legislative and congressional candidates in those swing districts, in areas where the votes tend to be close, and we support with get out the vote efforts, ballot harvesting, ballot prep, one-on-one communication with voters, various tools we use that all together are designed to increase voter turnout. As you know, voter turnout has been trending down in Washington State for both Republicans and Democrats and all voters of all sorts. We want to boost the Republican voters and the conservative common sense voters, and maybe even a few moderate Democrat voters who think they want to vote differently. We want to boost their voting. We want to get more of them voting, and we'll be focused on that as we always are. We have, of course, a very hot congressional race happening this cycle in Washington's 3rd congressional district. That's Southwest Washington. But we expect there are going to be a couple of congressional races that are interesting. And at the legislative level for Olympia, Of course, all the state House representatives are up for re-election, as well as half of the state senators. But there's a little bit that's different this year when it comes to the November elections that I want to talk about for just a moment. There's been a lot of turnover on the state Supreme Court here in Washington. And it's an unusual opportunity that we have this year to get a couple, or maybe more than a couple, of constitutional-minded, conservative, maybe even just common sense judges elected to the Washington State Supreme Court. It's an unusual situation. 5 of the 9 judges on the Washington State Supreme Court have either resigned or must not run again. And remember, we elect our judges in Washington because of age. They've reached a mandatory retirement age. So 5 of the 9 judges on the state Supreme Court are open or up. And we really think it's a rare opportunity to get at least a few, maybe more than a few, good judges elected to the state Supreme Court. Now, judge elections are always hard in Washington because they are nonpartisan, and judge candidates are restricted by legal ethics rules, not law, but ethics rules, from saying very much in detail about what they believe or how they might vote or rule on a case. So the races, the elections for judges, especially state Supreme Court judges, tend to be low participation. People don't know what to do, and they just don't fill out that race on their ballot. So our effort this year is going to focus particularly on increasing conservative and moderate common sense voters to vote in the judge races for the state Supreme Court. We had one race a couple years ago for the state Supreme Court where our candidate lost by less than 1%, about 0.5%. And we believe that by increasing voter turnout, we can get some of those races to go our way. And I should say that candidate from a couple of years ago is one of the conservative judges running this year. That's David Larson. Some of you will remember his name from a few years ago. There are a couple other good judges running this year too, and we will be focusing our get out the vote efforts on the legislative and congressional races, but also on these judge races. I believe it's a rare opportunity for us to get some common sense judges on the state Supreme Court, where they're needed very much. That's it for this update. There's a lot going on. We'll be talking about all these things in the weeks and months to come. But for now, be well and stay strong.